Hey guys, how's it going? Welcome back to another formation video on the channel, and I just wanted to say a massive thank you to everybody that is showing incredible support on the channel at the minute. You guys have been absolutely unreal, smashing the like button every video, putting loads of amazing comments. So I just want to say a massive thank you to everyone that is watching the content in a minute, and I'm glad you're all enjoying it. Let me know in the comment section if there's any other little tips and tricks you want me to put in any future videos, and we'll get those done as soon as possible. But today we are going back to the 4-2-3-1 and seeing if it's still a meta formation post patch. Now for me, before the patch, this 4-2-3-1 was the best formation in the game. There's some other good formations in the game, but for me this was the best one. This was the pinnacle. This was the one that you should have been using if you wanted to get the most amount of wins. So I'm going to go back to it post patch, see if it is still a good formation. I've not actually used it post patch. I want to test it out, see if it's still good. Now we already did a video on this one, this 4-2-3-1 video, but if you haven't seen it, go and check that out. But if you haven't seen it, you can get a little quick review of it here. So this is a very good formation this year, this 4-2-3-1. You can see, as I said, it's got loads of amazing little passing triangles between your players. This is why it was so good before, and I still think it's going to be effective post-patch because of the amount of, because the game feels a lot slower now. The game feels a lot slower. It feels a lot more about possession. Yes, if you've got quick players up front, you can still kind of pace abuse if you like. But I think if you still want to be able to build up and play like a methodical possession build-up style of play, I still think this formation is going to suit the game, because the game style does feel a little bit slower, and there's loads of amazing little passing triangles, and just your players are very close together, they're very close knitted together. So I think it's very easy to work your way up the pitch. And with these two kind of wide cams, if you like, you still have width in that team, especially as you can see who we've got. We've still got some pacey players in our team, especially in those wide cam positions, so we're still able to use those wings, but they're not really wingers. That's the thing that I think is really good about this formation, is those kind of wide cams, they don't play as wingers, because they're not as wide. Like the fullbacks don't mark them because they're not all the way out on the wing, but there's kind of no central midfielders that are close enough to mark them either. They're kind of always in space. That's what I found before the patch. So I'm going to test it out and see if it's still good post patch. But I think those three cams always work well. They always seem to sit just in front of the CDMs as well, so if the guy is trying to play out from the back, normally you have a good chance of trying to steal the ball really quick. However, if he does get beyond your front four, your strikers and your three cams, sometimes it can leave you a little bit open in that central midfield area. So going into our instructions, I've decided to go for overlap. I still think that overlap on our fullbacks is the best way to go. Even though we do have those kind of wide players, I think the thing is, because we have those wide players, we don't need to tell our fullbacks to stay back while we're attacking. They can still get forwards, they can support, because our wide players will get back and defend if needed. One thing I always found with this formation is if your fullbacks went forward, your two kind of wide players would always slot in kind of as temporary fullbacks, especially like I found when I was playing champs with this formation. I found that often Mendy would go forwards for me, and I would find Sadio Mane in the left back spot, and I think that's really important. It shows the intelligence in your players that they're covering the space. In some formations that's not always the case. In some formations your players will charge forwards and there'll be no one there to cover them. So I think that's really clever. It seems to be one of those clever things about this formation, is your players seem to recognise when space is opened up, and they seem to cover it really, really well. But I still think going on balance is the best way to go. It's always nice to have your fullbacks go forward and create a little bit of an outlet, and they're going to play a little bit wider than your wide cams when they overlap, so I think that's really important. Now CDM wise, we've gone on cut on the passing lanes. I always want to try and intercept that ball. You could always try man mark. It's not something I've actually ever really tried. I've never really tried man mark. But I always like to go cut passing lanes. I always like to try and jump in front of the lanes and try and create those quick counter attacks. So it's kind of the way that I've personally always liked to play. Although I've heard from better players than me, and it seems to be a pattern that I see, like the really, really top players you've ever seen, like pro tactics. A lot of the pro tactics, they tend to go with man mark. So I think that might be something to try out in a future formation video. But typically, I would say for the average player, I would say stick with cut passing lanes. I think that's going to be a little bit better for you. Stay back while attacking, of course, because we've already got our fullbacks that are going to go forward a little bit, and we've already got that front four at the beginning. So we don't want to go too attacking, we don't want to go too gung-ho, and cover the centre as always, because as I said yesterday, covering the wing is practically useless, and if you had a choice to leave the wing open or to leave the middle of the pitch open. I would rather leave the wing open every day of the week. You don't want to leave the middle of the pitch open at all. You want to always make sure the middle of the pitch is covered. And we've got the important thing there, we've got two powerhouse midfielders. I think in this formation, it's quite important who your personnel is. I think if as your two midfielders, you kind of want them to be really kind of like powerhouse midfielders, because they are going to, every now and again, they do drift forwards and they are going to sit on like the edge of the box in attacks. So you do want them to kind of be able to have some ability to shoot and pick passes out. And the thing that's key about this formation as well, you don't necessarily have to have the best stamina players as well, because this is a formation there's a change that's happened in this new patch, is that stamina seems to be quite important. Players seem to get drained really fast, especially if you've played on any kind of press, heavy touch, possession loss or constant pressure. Your players get gassed really, really fast. But the thing about this formation, if you don't play on a press, you don't necessarily need the high stamina players, because your players don't get gassed because everyone's quite close together. They do cover each other's positions pretty well, and it's more of a formation where you can build up slowly, so you don't have to do a lot of running in behind. You can just build the play up slowly and your players don't get gassed. So you don't need to have high stamina players here. Obviously they don't want to be too low. If they do have stamina, then it's a bonus. The wide cams in this formation, Dembele and Mane, I keep these wide cams personally. I keep them on basic. I don't want them on comeback while defence, because I don't want it to be too defensive, and I don't want them to stay forwards because I do want them to help out a little bit in defence. Because when those fullbacks do go forwards, that's when they can slot in and just protect and just be temporary fullbacks while waiting for them to get back in position. Crossing runs, I always keep on. I always just keep on balance. I let it happen naturally in the game. If my players get in the box, I just let it happen naturally. I don't want to interfere too much with that, and obviously the rest of it we're going to keep on standard. The same with Mane. Central cam Firmino, again, pretty much kept him on standard, but I've decided to keep him on stay forwards. More importantly for kind of like counter attacks, because if I just have him on get back as well and just on the balanced, Mbappe, my striker, typically the gap, if you're in your defending half and you pick up the ball, the gap between your cams, those three cams, and Mbappe is often huge. If I leave my centre forward, like my cam there, he almost plays like a centre forward. And it at least leaves two players up front for me, so I'm able to it gives me more chance to get out if I'm under a little bit of pressure. By leaving him forwards, I've now got two players to try and hit, and they can work off each other, whilst the rest of my team now shifts up the pitch. So I think it's always a good idea to at least have maybe two players going up front like that. And then Mbappe, my striker, I've got stay central and getting behind. This is more dependent on personnel. The thing about instructions, it's dependent on your personnel. Because I've got Mbappe, obviously I want to try and utilise his pace, obviously that extreme pace that he's got, so I obviously want him to get in behind, and I don't want him to drift wide. I want it because I'm going to have those wide cams who are going to exploit that kind of width, so I need that person in the midfield, so in the centre, so I'm going to keep Mbappe on stay central. And then moving into our tactics, defensive style, I've kept on balanced, as I said in the instructions. Typically playing on a press, any kind of a press. Think about playing on a press now. Now that I've played with this formation, these are my tactics that I used for the games and for the gameplay that you saw. And the thing that I found when playing on a press, your players get gassed really fast. If you try and play on any sort of a press, your players get really gassed. And playing on the defensive style of balanced, your players don't get tired, your players are able to still go at the end of the game. I felt, especially a lot of my opponents that tried playing on press, because the game is quite slow now, press doesn't really work as effectively, because your team doesn't really press the ball. They do press it, but not really with any intensity. And if you're playing a half decent player, he can just, if he's got any kind of composure about his play, he can easily find a pass and just get out. So I personally don't see at the minute in this current patch, I don't see the advantage of playing on any sort of a press. So I'd recommend always trying to stay on balanced if you can. Width wise for me, I always keep it standard on 6. It's pretty much what I use for every formation. As I said, you never want to be too narrow, because then it leaves obviously a lot of space out wide, because a lot of people do play with wingers, so you don't want to give them too much space out wide, and you don't want to go too wide, because then it just opens up gaps in the midfield, makes it a little bit harder for you to play possession in the middle of the pitch. And the whole point of this formation really is possession. It's kind of a possession-based formation. Your players are quite closely knit together, so you don't want to, make that worse. You don't want to open up them gaps. Depth-wise, as I said, we keep it on 6 depth. I don't want to go, as somebody pointed out in the comments in the last video, we don't want to go 1 depth. We're not those type of guys, and we don't want to go. Obviously, we don't want to go too crazy high, but 6, anywhere from 5 to 7 on depth is fine. Depends on your style of defending. If you're someone who likes to back off and you don't like to kind of jump in front of lanes, and you don't like to try and be an aggressive defender, then maybe going on something like 4 will suit you. If you're someone who likes to be a bit of an aggressive defender and try and win the ball high up the pitch, then probably going on 6 or 7 is the way to go. I like to keep it on 6. It's just a little bit above standard. Now the offensive style. Now I've decided to go with long ball. I found this was the most effective tactic. Obviously I have those quick players up front. I have Dembele, I have Mbappe, I have Mane. So I have those quick players. So I want to utilize that pace. I want to try and get my players to get in behind and create some problems for my opponent's defenders in behind. So I went with long ball. You could go with balance again if you're someone who is more of a if you want to be a really possession based player. Obviously you could go with possession. The problem with this is it means everyone comes short, and those tactics, for example on your striker like we had on Mbappe, of getting behind, he'll ignore that. He'll come and do your tactic instead. So if your tactic's possession, he'll drop short, he'll drop into midfield to try and pick the ball up. Balanced is a way you could go. If you want to trigger the runs yourself, you could obviously go on balanced. I think because of the personnel, this one's more down to personnel. If you've got personnel who like to run in behind, if you've got quick players, you want to utilize that pace, then long ball is the way to go. If you don't necessarily have too much pace in your team, then going with balanced is going to suit you a lot more, because you're not going to want to, if you haven't got pace, you're not going to want to be making runs in behind, because your players aren't going to have the pace to beat the defenders. This one's more down to the personnel you have in your team. If you've got quick players, go with long ball. If you don't have quick players, go with balanced. And if you want to play a purist possession style of FIFA, then go on possession. But for me, I found long ball was effective. Width-wise, as I said, want to keep it on 6, the same as a defensive style. Players in the box, I keep on 5. I never like to change this too much off 5. As I said, I like to let my instructions do the work for me. So if I tell my players to get in the box, I want them to do it. So I keep this pretty much standard on 5. I don't want them to ignore the instructions. And then corners, I've actually decided to keep them on 1. I found that corners now are terrible. You used to be able to score a lot of near post corners in the last patch. In this new patch, you don't seem to be able to score corners ever. So I think just going short for corners and working a short routine is better. And then free kicks, pretty much the same. It's quite difficult, I find, to score free kicks. That might just could be because I'm not good. But I don't really score too many free kicks. I like to just keep the ball and just keep it moving in open play. But overall, I actually found this formation was still extremely effective. I thought it was still really good. Post-patch or pre-patch, sorry, I thought it was the best formation in the game. I still think it is one of the best formations in the game. I don't find it is as effective as it was before. I find that your wide players maybe stay a little bit wider than they did before. They don't quite get involved in the game, and your CDMs really do sit back. So I still think it would definitely be, for me, one of the top 3 formations in FIFA now, post-patch, but I wouldn't necessarily put it as a clear favourite. Pre-patch, I would have had it as a clear favourite for the best formation in the game. Right now, I wouldn't say it's a clear favourite, but I would absolutely still put it in the top 3. So if you don't want to use this formation, 100% go for it. Try out these tactics and and these instructions, and let me know how it goes. As I said at the beginning of the video, guys, I just want to say a massive thank you to all the support you've been giving recently on these videos, showing incredible, crazy support. So I just want to say a huge thank you to you guys. And let me know in the comment section if there is any other formations or videos that you want me to do of these reviews. Make sure you drop a thumbs up, make sure you hit the subscribe button as well if you're new to the channel. And that's all today, guys. Have an awesome day. I'm out.